A struggling nurse saying to her comatose patient every night, she didn't know he was a billionaire. Before we continue, please remember to like, share and subscribe. The hospital breathed in silence. It was past midnight, and the sterile corridors of St. Clair's Medical Center stretched quietly under soft fluorescent lights. Machines whispered their steady beeps behind closed doors, and the occasional shuffle of a nurse's shoes echoed like a fading memory. Most of the building slept. But Sarah remained awake, as always. She moved slowly down the hallway, her navy blue scrubs creased from a double shift. A clipboard tucked under one arm, her other hand brushed hair from her damp forehead. Her steps were heavy with exhaustion, but her expression held warmth, that flicker of gentleness she never let go of, no matter how hard her day had been. At the end of the hallway, she stopped in front of room 407. A nameplate hung beside the door, Mark W. Bennett. Sarah didn't knock. She never did. The man inside wouldn't answer. She pushed open the door with a soft creak and slipped in like a secret. The room was private and quiet, dimly lit by the soft glow of monitors. Mark lay still on the bed, tubes attached, machines humming around him. His chest rose and fell in a slow rhythm, untouched by the chaos of the world outside his hospital suite. He had been in a coma for weeks, unmoving, unresponsive. But Sarah came every night. She placed her clipboard gently on the counter and pulled a chair to his bedside. Her fingers brushed a small wrinkle in the blanket near his hand. Then she leaned back, exhaled slowly, and let the silence settle around them. Without a word, she began to hum. It was an old lullaby, something her mother once sang to her when she couldn't sleep. Her voice, though soft and untrained, carried a soothing cadence. She sang not for applause or praise, but for peace. It was the only thing that calmed her. And somehow, she believed it helped him too. She had no idea he could hear every note. Mark, the billionaire no one truly knew, lay still, his eyes shut, his mind alert. He had kept up the act for weeks, letting the world believe he was unconscious. It had started as a way to escape, to hide from everything he'd built but no longer valued. But now, as Sarah's voice filled the room, something within him stirred. His fingers twitched, barely. A subtle movement that went unnoticed by Sarah, whose eyes were closed as she sang. But inside, a storm was beginning. Her voice touched something he had forgotten existed. She finished the song, gave a soft, tired smile, and whispered, "Good night, Mark." Then she stood, quietly gathering her things and slipping out into the hallway again, back into the endless rhythm of duty. Behind her, in the quiet of room 407, Mark's breathing shifted. Still motionless, but no longer numb. The silence had been broken, not by noise, but by a melody that began to wake him. Their story had just begun. The first light of dawn crept through the thin curtains of Sarah's small apartment, casting long shadows across the cramped space. It was quiet except for the soft hum of the old refrigerator and the faint buzzing of a flickering light bulb in the corner, struggling to stay alive. Sarah pushed open the door and stepped inside, the weight of the day settling heavily on her shoulders. The apartment was cluttered, evidence of a life stretched thin by time and money. Unpaid bills lay stacked on the kitchen counter, the top one marked with a bright red overdue stamp. On the worn couch, Jake, her fiancé, was asleep, but not peacefully. His brow was furrowed, his mouth set in a stubborn line, and despite the early hour, his irritation was palpable. The cold air between them was thicker than the stale coffee on the table. Sarah sighed quietly, careful not to wake him. She slipped out of her shoes and headed to the small kitchenette. Opening the fridge, she found only a few leftovers, a meager dinner from the night before. She reheated the food slowly, the microwave's hum filling the silence. With a plate in hand, she settled on the edge of a rickety chair and pulled out her phone. The screen lit up with a video call from her mother. The woman's face appeared, tired but smiling weakly. "How are you feeling today, Mom?" Sarah asked softly, forcing warmth into her voice. "Better, thanks to you," her mother replied, her voice fragile but steady. "I'm proud of you, Sarah." Sarah smiled, but the exhaustion in her eyes betrayed her inner struggle. "I just wish I could do more." The call ended, leaving Sarah alone again with her worries. She glanced at the clock. It was almost time to change for her next shift. There was no rest for her, no real break from the cycle of endless work and relentless responsibility. Her thoughts drifted to Mark, the comatose patient she visited every night. Singing to him had become the only solace she allowed herself, a small escape from the harsh realities of her life. When she was with him, she felt like she mattered, like her voice could reach beyond the hospital walls and touch something real. Sarah stood and moved to her tiny bedroom. The walls were bare, save for a few faded photographs pinned above the bed. Pictures of happier times, before life had become a constant battle. She changed into her scrubs with practiced efficiency, each movement automatic but weary. As she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the tired woman staring back. Her dark circles told stories of sleepless nights, long shifts, and emotional exhaustion. Yet beneath it all, there was a spark, a stubborn hope that kept her going. Her phone buzzed, a message from Jake. It was short, cold, and to the point, "We need to talk." Sarah's heart sank. Their relationship was fraying at the edges, strained by her endless hours at the hospital and his growing resentment. But right now, there was no time to fix what was breaking. She took a deep breath, gathered her things, and headed out the door. The world outside was waking up, indifferent to her struggles. But inside her, a quiet determination burned. Tonight, she would sing again. Not just for Mark, but for herself. Because sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness and courage were what kept people alive. And in that fleeting moment of song, Sarah found a fragile thread of hope, a promise that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. The night settled heavily over room 407, the soft glow from the bedside monitors casting long shadows across the sterile walls. Outside, the hospital hummed with the quiet rhythm of the late shift, but inside this small sanctuary, time seemed to pause. Sarah sat close to the bed, her voice low and gentle as she sang a soulful melody, an old song filled with longing and hope. Her eyes were closed, her tired face illuminated by the flickering light of the monitor, as her words floated through the still air. For weeks, Mark Bennett had lain motionless, his body a shell of the man he once was. The world believed him unconscious, trapped in a coma after the devastating car accident that shattered his life. But inside, Mark's mind was far from dormant. His consciousness was sharp, painfully aware, and utterly trapped. His eyes, closed for so long, now twitched ever so slightly as they absorbed every note of Sarah's voice. Beneath the surface, his breathing deepened. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it marked the beginning of something profound, a crack in the cold, impenetrable shell he'd built around himself. In Mark's mind, memory surged unbidden, sharp and vivid. He was back in the sleek glass towers of his corporate empire, commanding boardrooms with ruthless precision. The applause of deals won and the clinking of expensive glasses during lonely celebrations haunted him. Success had come at a price, isolation, bitterness, and a growing void he tried to fill with wealth. The car crash wasn't just an accident, it was a breaking point. Overwhelmed by the weight of his responsibilities and the hollowness of his achievements, Mark had chosen to retreat from the world. He had staged the coma as a means of escape, a way to shut out the noise and expectations of a life he no longer wanted. But Sarah's voice, soft, sincere, unpretentious, was beginning to penetrate that self-imposed prison. Her songs carried with them the rawness of real emotion, something Mark hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just the music. It was the kindness behind it, the connection he had long forgotten. As Sarah sang, Mark's mind drifted further into the past. He saw a younger version of himself, full of ambition but unaware of the loneliness ahead. He remembered the nights spent in expensive hotel rooms, the deals made without a second thought for anyone else, and the smiles that never reached his eyes. He realized how far removed he'd become from the person he once hoped to be. Back in the present, Mark's fingers twitched again, this time more noticeably. His eyes fluttered open for a brief moment, catching a glimpse of Sarah's face, a face marked by exhaustion but shining with compassion. She was unaware that he had heard every word, every note, every confession whispered in the quiet darkness. Her voice faltered slightly, as if sensing a change in the air. Yet, she kept singing, unaware that the comatose man she sang to was waking. Mark's awakening was more than physical. It was a stirring of something deeper, hope, regret, and a yearning for redemption. The icy fortress around his heart was cracking, and for the first time in a long while, he felt the possibility of change. Outside the room, the hospital remained quiet, but inside room 407, a silent transformation was unfolding, one that would alter two lives forever. As Sarah's song drew to a close, Mark's eyes opened fully. The man who had been lost in darkness was beginning to return to the light. Their journey had just begun. Night after night, the hospital room remained a quiet refuge, a small world suspended in time. The glow from the machines cast soft, wavering light on Sarah's face as she sat beside the bed in room 407. Outside, the world moved on, but inside, a fragile, unspoken connection was quietly weaving itself between two very different souls. Each evening, Sarah arrived with the same gentle ritual. She pulled a chair close to Mark's bedside, her tired eyes softening as she looked down at the still figure before her. Though Mark remained motionless, his presence was palpable, like a steady heartbeat beneath the silence. And so, Sarah sang. Sometimes it was a lullaby, other times a song filled with laughter and memories, sometimes a quiet melody of sorrow that made her voice tremble. Over time, the routine became more than a duty, it became a lifeline for both of them. The camera shifts between moments, Sarah's soft laughter as she recalls happier memories from her childhood, her voice breaking as she confesses the strain her long hours have put on her relationship with Jake. The exhaustion etched into her face deepens as she shares her dreams of being seen and loved, not just for her work but for who she is beneath the uniform. Tears slip down her cheeks in moments of vulnerability, yet her spirit remains quietly resilient. Though Mark doesn't move, his face tells another story. His eyelids flutter subtly, almost imperceptibly, as if trying to hold on to every word, every note. A single tear escapes and trails down his cheek, a silent response to the raw honesty Sarah offers. It is in these small, fragile movements that the audience glimpses the profound impact her presence has on him. Inside Mark's mind, a voice begins to take shape. A silent, internal monologue filled with thoughts and emotions he cannot yet express aloud. He watches Sarah with a mixture of awe and longing, aching to reach out, to speak, to break the invisible barrier he's built. Yet, he holds back, afraid to shatter the fragile illusion of stillness he has created. I hear you, he thinks, I see you. More than anyone has in years. But the words remain locked inside, a secret only his heart can voice. The tension between them grows with every passing night. Sarah's vulnerability contrasts sharply with Mark's quiet reserve. She lays bare her fears and hopes, while he listens silently, caught between the desire to connect and the need to protect himself from pain. Their bond is unspoken but undeniable. The hospital room becomes a stage for their quiet dance, her open heart reaching out, his guarded soul inching closer to awakening. Sarah's voice is a lifeline, pulling Mark from the depths of isolation, while Mark's silent presence gives Sarah a reason to keep hoping. In these moments, the walls between them dissolve, if only for a fleeting time. As the montage unfolds, viewers witness the slow transformation in both. Sarah, once weighed down by exhaustion and doubt, begins to find strength in the connection she shares with this mysterious man. And Mark, trapped within his own silence, starts to feel the stirrings of something he thought lost, a fragile spark of trust and belonging. The night fades into dawn, but the bond lingers, unspoken yet profound. Though no words are exchanged, their souls speak volumes. In the quiet hospital room, two lonely hearts find a way to heal, together yet apart. The story of their unspoken bond is only just beginning. The hospital corridor was eerily quiet as Sarah hurried toward room 407, her footsteps uneven and hurried, betraying the storm raging inside her. The weight of the day's events pressed down on her, dragging her spirit to a breaking point she had tried so hard to avoid. Moments earlier, she had stood face to face with Jake, her fiancé, their argument raw and painful. Harsh words filled the air, accusations, frustrations, and fears laid bare. Jake's cold dismissal echoed in her ears as she left their shared apartment behind, feeling more alone than ever. Now, tears threatened to spill freely as Sarah opened the door to the room she had come to see as a sanctuary. Mark lay there, motionless, the steady beep of the machines his only companion. But tonight, the silence between them felt different, thicker, heavier. She pulled a chair close to the bed, collapsing into it as the exhaustion and emotion overwhelmed her. Her voice trembled as she began to sing, but it was no longer just a lullaby or a soothing melody. This time, her song was laced with pain, raw, unfiltered. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," she whispered between breaths. "The long hours, the lonely nights, the fights with Jake. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just settling. Settling for a life that's barely holding together." Her hand shook as she reached out, lightly touching Mark's arm, as if seeking comfort from the unresponsive man. "This room is the only place I feel safe," she admitted, voice cracking. "Here, with you, I can be honest. I can be myself." The room was filled with her vulnerability, a stark contrast to the cold, clinical surroundings. For the first time, Mark's eyes flickered open, just a fraction, a barely noticeable movement, but it was enough to change everything. Yet, Sarah, lost in her confession and grief, didn't see it. Inside Mark's mind, the stillness shattered. He was awake, truly awake, and the weight of Sarah's words hit him with unexpected force. Her pain, her honesty, her courage, it stirred something deep within him that had been buried beneath years of isolation and regret. He realized how much he had missed, how distant he had become from the world and from the very emotions that make life worth living. That night, as the hospital quieted into the early hours, Mark made a decision, a choice to stop hiding behind the mask of silence and illusion he had worn for so long. No more pretending. No more running from responsibility or connection. The camera lingers on his eyes, now fully open, clear, and focused. There's a new determination in their depths, a spark of life that had been dormant for far too long. His gaze locks onto Sarah, the woman who had unknowingly broken through the barriers he had built around his heart. A heartbeat sound swells softly in the background, matching the rhythm of this pivotal moment, the turning point where two lives, so different yet intertwined, begin to shift toward something new. Mark's awakening is not just physical, it's emotional, spiritual. He is ready to face the world again, to confront the mistakes of his past and embrace the possibility of redemption and connection. Meanwhile, Sarah, unaware of the change she has sparked, finishes her song with a fragile hope lingering in her voice. She feels lighter somehow, as if sharing her truth has lifted a burden she didn't fully realize she carried. The room, once a place of silence and stillness, now holds a quiet promise of transformation. As Sarah stands to leave, she glances back at Mark, her heart unknowingly tethered to the man who has just begun to truly see her. Outside, the dawn breaks, soft and golden, heralding the start of a new chapter for them both. The breaking point has passed. And from it, a fragile but powerful new beginning emerges. The first light of dawn seeps softly through the hospital blinds, casting a gentle glow across room 407. Sarah entered as she did every morning, the familiar weight of exhaustion resting on her shoulders. But today, something was different, an uneasy stillness hung in the air, pulling at her senses before she even crossed the threshold. Her steps faltered as she caught sight of Mark. He was sitting up in bed, alert, his eyes wide open and locked onto hers. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Sarah's heart raced, her breath catching in her throat as disbelief crashed over her like a tidal wave. She stumbled backward, blinking rapidly, unsure if the figure before her was real or just a dream conjured from the depths of her fatigue. "Mark," she whispered, her voice trembling with shock. He smiled softly, the first genuine expression she had ever seen on him. "Sarah," he said, his voice low but clear, like a secret finally set free. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken questions and raw emotion. Sarah's mind raced, a tempest of confusion, anger, and betrayal swirling within her. How could he have kept this from her? The man she had cared for in the quiet of the night, the one she had shared her deepest fears with, had been awake all along? Mark reached out, his hand trembling slightly as it hovered between them, hesitant yet longing for connection. "I owe you the truth," he said, voice steady but filled with remorse. "I'm not the man you think I am, or maybe I'm more than that. I'm Mark Bennett, the billionaire everyone believed was in a coma." Sarah's eyes widened, disbelief giving way to a flood of emotions. "Why? Why would you pretend?" Her voice cracked, hurt and confusion blending together. "I was lost," Mark admitted, his gaze falling to his hands. "The accident gave me an escape, a way to step away from the world I built with greed and ambition, a world that left me empty and alone. I wanted to hide, to find peace away from all the noise." He looked back up, eyes shining with vulnerability. "But your voice, your songs, they reached me when nothing else could. You saved me, Sarah, without even knowing it." The room seemed to shrink around them, the sterile hospital walls closing in as the weight of his confession settled like a heavy fog. Sarah's mind reeled. She felt exposed, like the foundation of her trust had been shaken to its core. How could she reconcile the man she thought she knew with the stranger revealing himself now? Tears welled in her eyes, a mixture of relief and pain. "I sang to someone I thought was gone," she whispered. "And all this time, you were listening." Mark nodded, his expression softening. "I was. And I want to make things right. I want to be someone you can trust." The tension in the room was palpable, a fragile bridge between two wounded souls navigating the treacherous path of truth and forgiveness. Sarah swallowed hard, her heart torn between skepticism and hope. "It's going to take time," she said finally, her voice steady but cautious. "I don't know if I can just trust you." "Not yet." Mark reached for her hand again, this time more firmly, a silent promise passing between them. "I'll wait," he said simply. "For as long as it takes." In that quiet morning light, vulnerability laid bare, a new chapter began, not with certainty, but with a fragile, powerful possibility. Two people, bound by secrets and song, stood at the crossroads of change. The truth was out. And with it came the chance for healing. The sun shone brightly over the bustling city park, where the laughter of children mingled with the soft melodies drifting from a nearby street musician's guitar. Among the crowd, Mark and Sarah walked side by side, their steps light, their faces glowing with the warmth of a new beginning. Gone were the sterile hospital walls and the silence of room 407. Today, the world felt alive, and so did they. Sarah, once the exhausted nurse who sang to a comatose patient, was now a woman transformed. She had left the hospital behind, pursuing a career in music therapy, a calling born from those quiet nights spent singing to Mark. Her eyes sparkled with renewed purpose, and her laughter flowed freely, no longer weighed down by exhaustion or doubt. Beside her, Mark walked with a relaxed confidence that had been absent for years. The ruthless businessman who had once hidden behind a coma was gone. In his place stood a man who had stepped away from the relentless pursuit of wealth to dedicate himself to a new mission, founding a charity to support nurses and caregivers, the unsung heroes of countless stories like theirs. His heart, once guarded and cold, was open, beating in rhythm with the compassion Sarah had awakened within him. Their journey had been anything but easy. There were moments of mistrust, pain, and fear. But through it all, they had discovered something rare and precious, a shared purpose and a bond that transcended their vastly different worlds. As they strolled along the tree-lined path, Sarah's hand brushed against Mark's, and he smiled down at her. The simple touch spoke volumes. Of healing, forgiveness, and a future built on trust. Suddenly, a child darted past them, her giggles echoing like a melody. Sarah's lips curved into a smile, and without thinking, she began to hum a soft tune. It was the same lullaby she had once sung in that quiet hospital room, a song that had become the soundtrack of their story. Mark's eyes met hers, and he joined in, his voice blending gently with hers. The two voices wove together, filling the air with a harmony that spoke of hope and new beginnings. Around them, the world carried on, the buzz of conversations, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, but in that moment, time seemed to pause. Their song was a promise, a celebration of how far they had come and a beacon for the path ahead. As their humming faded into the ambient sounds of the park, the camera slowly pulled back, capturing the scene in its entirety. Two souls walking forward, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. A soft melody played over the closing shots, and a gentle narration whispered, "Sometimes, healing begins with a song." The words lingered, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, connection and compassion can light the way. For Mark and Sarah, their story was no longer one of silence and solitude. It was a new chapter, one filled with music, hope, and the promise of tomorrow. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please ensure to like, share and subscribe.